Hello, and welcome to the Scope of Things podcast, a no-nonsense look at the promise and problems of clinical research, based on a sweep of the latest news and emerging trends in the field, and what I think is worthy of your 30 or so minutes of time. I'm Deborah Borfitz, Senior Science Writer for Clinical Research News, which means I spend a lot of time with my ear to the ground on your behalf, and a lot of hours every week speaking to top experts from around the world. Please consider making this your trusted go-to channel for staying current on things that matter, whether they give us hope or cause for pause. In another 5 or so minutes, you'll be transported to the recently concluded Summit for Clinical Ops Executives, aka SCOPE, in Orlando, Florida, to hear from the newly crowned 2025 Participant Engagement Award winner and co-creators of the awards program, designed to recognize innovative approaches to improving clinical trial recruitment and retention. But first, the latest news, including new criteria for defining and diagnosing obesity, the case for including pregnant women in vaccine trials, generative AI for making trials more efficient, the subtyping of osteosarcoma, an inert gas being tested as a treatment for Alzheimer's, and the wide disparity between the average and midpoint cost of developing a new medicine. The 56-member Lancet Commission on Clinical Obesity recently published the first ever definitions of clinical and preclinical obesity in response to inaccurate and inconsistent definitions and diagnostic methods that can lead to significant overdiagnosis or underdiagnosis. The Commission took the middle ground in the ongoing debate about whether obesity is a disease by saying sometimes it is and sometimes it isn't. Among the new recommendations is to take measures of body fat in addition to body mass indexed, or alternatively, at least 2 measurements of body size or direct body fat measurement, regardless of BMI. The experts make no recommendations about the new generation of weight loss drugs such as Wegovy and Ozempic that have exploded in popularity. Patient groups are already voicing their displeasure about obesity being thought of as anything other than a disease, as are skeptics that obesity should ever be thought of as a disease. So this isn't over. A new study out of Australia makes a compelling case for the early inclusion of pregnant women in vaccine trials, as well as public health vaccination programs during pandemics, which is certainly not the prevailing practice currently. Based on a review of more than 1,500 research papers, investigators concluded that nearly all women who contract bird flu during pregnancy, along with their unborn baby, will die from the virus. Of the small number of babies who survive, the majority will be born prematurely. The growing number of human cases of avian influenza associated with outbreaks in birds and mammals has been raising concerns about the possibility of another pandemic soon, and unless things change, will result in a potentially high number of preventable deaths, as was seen during the influenza and SARS-CoV-2 pandemics and the Ebola epidemic. The paradigm shift could be achieved by the planning of vaccine trials to include the complex needs of pregnancy, the upscaling of adverse reaction detection systems to identify risks in pregnant women, and utilizing the capacity of existing surveillance systems. The Norris Comprehensive Cancer Center, affiliated with the Keck School of Medicine and the University of Southern California, will be piloting the use of generative AI to make its clinical trials more efficient via a partnership with the startup company Wright. This is the first U.S.-based academic site to join the company's fast-growing global Wright Research Network, which aims to match site capacity and capabilities to study opportunities with network-affiliated sponsors and CROs while helping them to improve site feasibility assessments, the efficiency of protocol development and study conduct, and the ability of patients and referring physicians to easily find appropriate trials. The testing phase will include the use of Wright AI tools for writing protocols and informed consent documents to expedite the development of investigator-initiated trials. If all goes well, the reach of Wright could expand to other non-cancer departments and academic units within the Keck School. Researchers in the UK are offering fresh hope that targeted treatments could be developed for osteosarcoma, a childhood cancer that starts in the bone. Currently, all patients are grouped together and treated using untargeted chemotherapy and surgery with very mixed outcomes that include limb amputation as well as severe and lifelong side effects from the chemotherapy. Here, advanced mathematical modeling and machine learning were used to categorize patients into 3 different subgroups using their genetic data. The study found that in each of the failed clinical trials over the past 50 years, there was a small response rate to the new drug, suggesting some of the drugs might in fact help patients with certain osteosarcoma subtypes. Moving forward, the hope is that the use of the new algorithm will mean successful clinical trial outcomes for the first time in over half a century. A clinical trial is about to begin that will test the use of inhaled xenon, an inert gas capable of crossing the blood-brain barrier to suppress neuroinflammation and boost protection against Alzheimer's disease. In animal models, the approach worked well in addressing both amyloid and tau pathologies. The phase 1 trial will enroll healthy volunteers at Brigham and Women's Hospital in Boston. The research team plans to continue studying the mechanisms by which xenon gas achieves its effects, as well as its potential for treating other neurologic diseases, including MS, ALS, and eye diseases that involve the loss of neurons. And finally, the average cost of developing a new medicine is a whole lot higher than the midpoint cost of development, which may be a better tool to use during policy discussions about drug costs in the U.S., according to researchers who examined 38 drugs recently approved by the U.S. Food and Drug Administration, a list that includes a small number of high-cost outliers. Cost estimates were made based on companies' annual public disclosures to the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission and Citeline's Trial Trove database, and the costs were calculated per patient month using company-wide R&D cost and activity data from all the drug developers examined. The RAND study, funded by Arnold Ventures, was meant to inform the debate about the impact of drug price regulation on investments in new drugs. As always, you can find a link to the various published articles and studies reported in today's news segment in the show notes.
Are you enjoying the conversation? We'd love to hear from you. Please subscribe to the podcast and give us a rating. It helps other people find and join the conversation. If you've got speaker or topic ideas, we'd love to hear those too. You can send them in a podcast review.
We are now going to switch gears a bit and have a chat with David Sall, President and CEO of Patient Enrollment Advisors, as well as co-creator of the Participant Engagement Award, fresh home from the Scope event in Orlando. David, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much.
Now, first, I want to give a big congrats to Grove AI, who we'll hear from directly in just a few minutes. But I think for the sake of our listeners, it makes sense to rewind so everyone understands the significance of this honor. So about a decade ago, you and Kelly McKee, head of innovative patient recruitment at Evanova, apparently started talking about the need for an awards program tied to this annual gathering of clinical trial leaders, and specifically those working in the realm of patient recruitment and engagement. So why there and why that focus?
Well, thank you very much, Deb. In 2015, I was attending the Scope conference, as was Kelly McKee, my co-creator, and we were noticing a lot of conversation at Scope, and we saw this phenomenal conference that really was, still in its growth phase. And we saw a ton of potential here as individual companies started talking about their innovations. But what we heard was really skin deep, just a little bit about, hey, we did this innovation and things went really well, but we didn't really understand what the innovation was. And it sparked an opportunity. Kelly and I discussed it at length and really felt that there was an opportunity within Scope to have a fun, uplifting segment, but one that also really explored these innovations with patient engagement at greater depth and really gave us some insight into what these companies were doing, what these innovations truly were, so that other attendees could utilize, replicate, or even reach out to them to collaborate on these points.
That makes perfect sense. Good thinking. And in what ways have you seen the conversation around the topic of participant engagement change over time? And a related question, in what ways do you think the conversation needs to change in ways that perhaps hasn't happened much yet?
Yeah, the evolution has been significant. I would say just when we talk about participant engagement in the terminology alone, we see an evolution. And I'm going to refer back to this year's Participant Engagement Award. One of the things that we highlighted in the opening comments was to discuss the terms that the industry as well as the public were using in referring to participants in clinical trials. And it was an interesting commentary that in the New York Times just this past summer, in their game, the New York Times Connections, referred to clinical trial participants as guinea pigs.
Oh boy.
And it's very much a 1960s mentality.
Exactly.
And so it was really important for us to highlight that to the audience, to make sure that we are all utilizing current terminology and educating not only ourselves, but the public on the importance of clinical trial participants, the respect that we need to give clinical trial participants, and the outcomes that come from their participation. So, I think that is one of the key pieces of the evolution, that you refer to. We do see that the companies that are presenting are really coming to us with new innovations that really reflect the current times and the current challenges that we're seeing in it. But of course, there are certain themes and topics that have been discussed for many years and are a little bit slow going. Unfortunately, healthcare tends to be a very large machine and is a little bit slow to evolve, or slower than we'd like it to. So it is so important to highlight those innovations because of that.
Yeah, it seems like some time ago, the controversy was you use the word subject even versus a participant versus a patient. Has that been settled, by the way? I'm just curious. That occurs to me quite often these days, and I don't know that I have the answer. I see them still all used.
Yeah, it's actually a great comment, and funny enough, while down in Orlando this year at the conference, someone did use the term subject,
Mm-hmm.
and I unabashedly called them out on it and said, please don't use the term subject. We do recognize that as a scientific term, but the reality is that clinical trial participants are people, and they are people first. And they are really the core contributors to any advancement in science. And so we need to treat them as people and use terminology that really reflects that.
Okay, I will try to continue to carry that torch with you moving forward. Good to know. Okay, so
Thank you, Deb.
right before the Participant Engagement Awards ceremony at Scope, during a panel discussion with some of the judges, it was brought out that the finalist themes this year were AI, DEI, and community engagement. Any surprises there?
The conversation around DEI and community engagement are consistent themes that we have seen come up year in and year out at Scope. So as I talk about kind of that slow moving machine, certainly these are topics that are being addressed, and it's just a matter of how we continue to bring them to the forefront. DEI in particular this year has been an ongoing conversation, whether it was within the panel conversations or out in the lobby. When we look at the current administration, there has been a ton of focus on diversity, equity, and inclusion as it comes to healthcare and as it comes to the FDA. And obviously, it is our concern and focus as well to make sure that there is representation in all of our clinical trials across all people, ethnicities, sexual genders, etc.
The focus should be on the science. I think that's one thing, her theme I kind of heard is like, keep going to like, how do we make the science count and mean something and follow all the scientific principles? And basically you're automatically going to get what, DEI programs, we used to like to, boldly call DEI programs would accomplish in any case. By any other name, it's the same thing.
Yeah, that's perfectly said, Deb, and that's exactly the theme that we heard even with our panel discussion. Several of our panelists brought that up and said it really is about the science. And in order to have sound science, we need to have diverse populations. So certainly a core topic. When we talk about AI, though, obviously that's a bit newer. AI, it was really critical to have been part of the conversation this year as we see it evolve. And what we love about Scope is it is a great place for all of our continuing education. And AI is an area that we all need to learn more and more about. What are the great opportunities with AI? And what are some of the concerns that we need to face? And so those were really core in our panel discussion. Not very surprising that it was there, but really, really happy that that was one of our core themes.
Yeah, I bet. And not surprising at all, right? I know some of the winning projects in the past have been sort of one-time efforts or events. How do we find more forward-looking projects or projects that persist over time?
Deb, we've already seen this shift. When we look at participants like the SGM Alliance, who last year was an honorable mention because there really wasn't the data to back up their claims. They submitted again this year with their engagement innovations, along with an incredible amount of data and growth. And so it was really important for us to honor an organization like that as they were able to show the consistency, the growth, and they will continue to grow and continue to be part of the conversation. So we are trying to kind of keep that consistency and recognize innovations that have happened. And then the other part of it is really metrics. So whereas at the beginning of the Participant Engagement Award, if there was a very creative innovation that was brought to us, but it really didn't have any metrics to back it up or any real growth, it was important for us to either give them an honorable mention or encourage them to continue to submit, but that they weren't a finalist at the time. And what you will see is all of our finalists last year and this year, it really is based on submissions that also had metrics so that we can see that they've already taken this innovation and implemented it in real life. And I hope that we will find ways within the award program to continue to recognize our winners in previous years and give an update on where they are in current times.
I like that. It has some teeth to it over time, some longevity, some sense of where it's been, where it's going, and why it matters in some real sense with some hard numbers attached. Smart move. So, David, thank you so much for being on the show. I appreciate it, bringing us up to speed on all things about the Participant Engagement Award and providing me with a perfect segue to our next segment where Allison Proffitt, the clinical research news editor, has grabbed the Grove AI team after their presentation at Scope to ask a few questions about its platform. Let's listen in.
Now I'm going to turn to the founding team of Grove AI. I have Sohit Gatiganti of Grove AI and Trân of Grove AI. And congratulations again on your win for the Participant Engagement Award. So Sohit, I'll start with you. Part of the Grove AI approach, I believe, is social listening that you built Grace after some social listening for recruitment and engagement. Can you tell me how you do that and what channels you use?
Yeah, so everything we do at Grove has been driven by data and by the needs of our customers and the patients. So we talk to all of our customers, see what workflows work best to best deliver the best patient experience. We talk to the patients, and we take that one step further. We listen back to all of our calls and see what exactly the patients need. So, for example, we had some of our patients really request Spanish-speaking agents, for example, and then we launched Spanish-speaking agents the next week. So really just listening to all of our stakeholders and just making product decisions based on that.
Great. Thank you. So, Trân, how much headway do you credit to working with patient advocacy groups? I mean, you've got the social listening, but are you also kind of connected with patient advocates in a more personal way?
Yeah, definitely. I think that's a great question. And as a patient with chronic conditions myself, that's how I got started in this, just the frustrations of so many calls and emails and no one responding. And it's no one's fault. There's just so much to do. And so that's how Grove was born, of just what if we made this agent that can be native to wherever the participants are and talk to them how they want to be interacted with. And also working with other groups like the patient advocacy groups is a huge part of just trying to understand how can we make this agent specialized and an expert for interacting with Alzheimer's and schizophrenia and other types of therapeutic areas that we're going after as well. And we hope to be that platform to amplify the voices of these patient advocacy groups and continue to make sure the patients are heard in the journey.
So I also had the pleasure of hearing you present at the investor forum at Scope as well. And so I got to hear Grace because she did part of the presentation. And she sounds shockingly human. So tell me, how many interactions has she had? How do patients feel about talking to her? What kind of you gave a long time that she spent on the phone with some folks. So tell me about that.
So Grace has been deployed in production at scale over the past year. We've done over 250,000 interactions, and we've been really encouraged by the just willingness of all of these patients to engage with Grace. Initially, we thought no one would talk to Grace for more than 30 minutes, and we set that as a hard limit, but we've seen some of our patients talk to Grace for up to an hour to go through some of the pre-screening questionnaires and make sure they get scheduled onto the calendars.
Okay, Trân, I'll end with you. What are the next steps? What do you hope to do? Where does Grove hope to be in the next year? What should we look for before the next scope?
Yeah, I was telling Sohit, it's so weird to win this award because we're only starting and there's still so many participants and patients we have to support, sites that we can support, and it's only the beginning for us. So we hope to use this as a platform to continue onwards and just listen to participants. What do they have concerns about? What do they have questions about? How can we make sure that the experience is consistent across all these participants? And I think these are challenges that our sites are facing, and we're so excited to be in the weeds with the sites that we work with and to be in all of the trials and continue supporting that. And hopefully next year come back to Scope with some more insights on how we can improve.
Excellent. Thank you both so much. David and Kelly, thank you as well. And we'll look forward to seeing you all again next year.
That was so much fun. Thanks for letting me take you there. And thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy day to listen in. If you're not subscribed to this podcast yet, please consider going to Apple Podcasts and doing so right now so you don't miss your monthly dose of news and perspectives you'll be hard-pressed to find anywhere else. And if you're up for it, I'd also be so very grateful if you'd leave a rating and review while you're there. For more straight talk and studies involving humans, visit clinicalresearchnewsonline.com. And if you're a clinical research professional, we hope also to see you at our next Scopes conference where we make things happen. Bye for now.